Picture a cold, misty morning in Boston, the kind where the air bites at your skin and the sky hangs low, heavy with secrets. The cemetery is quiet, save for the faint rustle of leaves skittering across the ground, pushed by a restless wind. Rows of weathered tombstones stretch out like silent sentinels, guarding the stories of those long gone. At the far end of this desolate place, a man stands alone, his silhouette sharp against the gray dawn. William Hayes, 62 years old, is a CEO who commands a real estate empire worth billions, a man whose name echoes through boardrooms and headlines. But here, in this forgotten corner of the world, he's just a shadow of himself, dressed in a tailored black coat, his silver hair catching the faint light as he clutches a bouquet of white lilies, his late wife's favorite. He moves slowly, his polished shoes sinking into the damp earth, each step heavier than the last. The grave he's come to visit is one he hasn't seen in years, not since the guilt became too much to bear. 20 years ago, his wife, Clara, died, or so he was told, in a tragic accident, taking with her the child they never had the chance to meet. William's life since then has been a hollow triumph, a glittering tower of wealth built on a foundation of loss. He kneels now, brushing away the dirt that clings to the tombstone, his fingers tracing the engraved letters, Clara Hayes, beloved wife. The words feel like a lie, a cruel reminder of the love he let slip through his fingers. He places the lilies down, his breath visible in the chilly air, and whispers, "I'm sorry, Clara. I should have been better." But before he can stand, a sound pierces the stillness, a soft, heartbreaking sob that seems to rise from the earth itself. William freezes, his hand still on the stone, his heart thudding in his chest. The sobs grow louder, layered with the voices of children, small and desperate, calling out a single word that sends a shiver down his spine, "Mommy." He turns his head, scanning the cemetery, and that's when he sees them. Four little girls, no more than 10 years old, kneel a few feet away, their tiny bodies trembling as they huddle together before Clara's grave. They're quadruplets, identical in every way, from their tangled brown hair to the tear-streaked dirt on their cheeks. Their clothes are tattered, thin jackets barely shielding them from the cold, and their hands clutch at the ground as if they could pull their mother back from it. William's first instinct is to leave. He's not a man who deals with children, let alone ones who look like they've been scraped off the streets. He stands, brushing the mud from his knees, ready to walk away, but something stops him. One of the girls looks up, her hazel eyes locking onto his, and the breath catches in his throat. Those eyes, they're Clara's eyes, the same shade of hazel flecked with green, the same depth that used to hold him captive. He blinks, thinking it's a trick of the light, but then another girl turns, and another, all four staring at him with faces that mirror his wife's in a way that's impossible to ignore. His knees wobble, and he grips the edge of the tombstone to steady himself, his face draining of color as a wave of nausea hits him. The girls don't notice his reaction, too lost in their grief. The smallest of them, her voice barely a whisper, reaches out toward the grave and sobs, "Mommy, we miss you. We don't have anyone else." William's mind races, a storm of questions tearing through the fog of his memories. Clara never had children, they tried, but it never happened. And she died, didn't she? He was at the funeral, saw the wreckage of the car, heard the doctors say there was no hope. So why are these girls here, crying for his wife as their mother? Why do they look like her, like ghosts of the woman he loved and lost? He takes a step closer, his polished shoes sinking deeper into the mud, and the girls finally notice him. Their sobs quiet, and they stare, wide-eyed, as if he's a stranger who might hurt them, or save them. One of them, the boldest, wipes her nose with a dirty sleeve and speaks, her voice trembling but fierce. "Who are you? Why are you at our mommy's grave?" William opens his mouth to answer, but no words come. He's a man who's faced down corporate giants without flinching, yet here, in the presence of these four fragile girls, he feels utterly powerless. His gaze darts back to the tombstone, then to their faces, and the resemblance hits him again, harder this time, like a punch to the gut. He wants to run, to escape the impossible truth staring him in the face, but those hazel eyes hold him there, pinning him to the spot. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of rain, and as the first drops begin to fall, William knows he's standing on the edge of something he can't yet understand, a mystery that will unravel everything he thought he knew about his past, his wife, and the life he's lived alone for 2 decades. The rain begins to fall in earnest now, a steady drizzle that blurs the edges of the cemetery, turning the tombstones into ghostly shapes in the mist. William Hayes stands frozen, his expensive coat soaking through, the bouquet of lilies at his feet wilting under the weight of the water. The 4 little girls, quadruplets, identical in their grief, stare at him with those haunting hazel eyes, their question hanging in the air like a challenge: "Who are you? Why are you at our mommy's grave?" He wants to answer, to demand answers of his own, but his throat feels tight, as if the words are trapped behind a wall he spent 20 years building. Instead, he turns away, his gaze falling back to the tombstone, to Clara's name etched in cold stone, and lets his mind drift to a time when that name meant everything to him. Let's step back, rewind the clock to understand the man William Hayes used to be. Picture him 30 years ago, a young man with fire in his veins, a dreamer who clawed his way out of a small, crumbling town in upstate New York to the gleaming skyscrapers of Boston. He was relentless, a force of nature who turned every opportunity into gold. By 40, he'd built a real estate empire that stretched across the East Coast, hotels, office towers, luxury estates, all bearing his name in bold, unapologetic letters. He was a king in a world of his own making, a man who could buy anything he wanted, except the one thing he couldn't name. Back then, he had Clara, his anchor in a sea of ambition. She was his high school sweetheart, a quiet girl with a smile that could melt the hardest hearts, and when they married at 25, he thought he'd found the kind of happiness that lasts forever. But empires don't grow without sacrifice, and William's came at a cost he didn't see until it was too late. Clara wanted a family, a home filled with laughter and little feet running through the halls, but William wanted more deals, more power, more proof that he was untouchable. He worked late, missed dinners, forgot anniversaries, and slowly, the light in Clara's eyes began to dim. She'd wait for him, her hands folded in her lap, her voice soft but pleading. "William, we need to talk about us," she'd say, but he'd brush her off, promising tomorrow, always tomorrow. The truth was, he couldn't give her what she wanted. Doctors had told them early on that children might never happen, his fault, a cruel twist of fate he refused to accept. He buried that pain under his work, telling himself that success would be enough for both of them. The breaking point came one stormy night, 20 years ago, when Clara sat him down, her hands trembling as she held a small, silver locket, a gift he'd given her on their first anniversary. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this anymore." William laughed, a cold, bitter sound, thinking she was bluffing. But then she opened the locket, revealing a tiny ultrasound photo, a grainy image of a life they'd never discussed. "I'm pregnant," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But you'll never believe it's yours." He didn't. His pride, his paranoia, his inability to face his own shortcomings, they all roared to life, and he accused her of betrayal, of lies, of breaking their vows. "If you don't trust me," she screamed, "then I'm done." He didn't stop her. He let her walk out into the rain, her suitcase banging against the doorframe, her sobs echoing in the empty house. 2 months later, he got the call, a car accident, they said, on a slick highway outside the city. Clara was gone, and the baby with her. William didn't go to the scene, didn't ask questions. He couldn't bear to see her like that, broken and lifeless, so he let the police handle it, let the funeral home arrange the burial. He stood at her grave that day, the same one he's standing at now, and watched as they lowered her coffin into the ground. He didn't cry, didn't speak. He turned away, vowing never to look back, and threw himself into his work with a ferocity that scared even his closest allies. The years that followed were a blur of acquisitions and accolades, but every night, when the lights went out, he'd see her face, those hazel eyes, that soft smile, and the guilt would claw at him, a beast he couldn't tame. Now, as he stands in the rain, those same hazel eyes are staring back at him, multiplied by 4, in the faces of these ragged little girls. He's a man who's spent 2 decades running from his past, a millionaire who owns half the city but has nothing to show for it in his heart. His mansion sits on a hill overlooking Boston, its rooms vast and silent, filled with the kind of luxury that feels like a mockery. No children, no family, just him and his ghosts. He stopped coming to this grave years ago, stopped thinking about Clara, stopped feeling much of anything. But today, something has shifted. These girls, with their desperate cries and their impossible resemblance, have cracked open a door he thought was locked forever. He takes a step closer, the rain dripping from the brim of his hat, and the girls flinch, their small bodies tensing as if they expect him to hurt them. He raises a hand, not to strike but to calm, and his voice comes out rough, like gravel scraped raw. "I'm not going to hurt you," he says, though the words feel hollow even to him. "Why are you here? Why do you think this is your mother's grave?" The boldest girl, the one who spoke before, stands, her tiny frame trembling but her chin lifted in defiance. "Because it is," she says, her voice breaking. "Her name's Clara. She was our mommy. And you're standing on her flowers." William looks down, sees the crushed petals of a few daisies beneath his shoes, and steps back, his heart pounding. The rain falls harder, soaking through their thin jackets, and as he looks into their faces, Clara's faces, he feels the ground beneath him shift, a tremor of something he can't yet name, pulling him toward a truth he's not ready to face. The rain falls heavier now, a relentless curtain that drenches the cemetery, turning the earth beneath William Hayes' feet into a muddy quagmire. He stands there, his expensive coat clinging to his shoulders, water dripping from the brim of his hat, but he barely notices the cold. His eyes are fixed on the 4 little girls before him, quadruplets, their identical faces a haunting echo of his late wife, Clara. They're huddled together, their thin jackets soaked through, their small hands clutching at the ground near Clara's grave as if they could hold on to her memory. The boldest of them, the one who spoke, glares at him with a mix of fear and defiance, her words still ringing in his ears. "Her name's Clara. She was our mommy." William's mind reels, a storm of disbelief and dread swirling inside him, but before he can press them further, he needs to understand who these girls are, where they came from, and why they're here, crying for a woman he buried 20 years ago. Let's turn our gaze to these 4 little girls, the quadruplets whose sobs have shattered the silence of this desolate place. Their names are Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily, names their mother chose because she loved flowers, a small act of beauty in a life filled with hardship. They're 10 years old, but their eyes carry the weight of a lifetime, a weariness that no child should know. Picture them just a few months ago, huddled under a tattered tarp in an alley behind a diner, their only shelter from the biting Boston winter. They've been on their own for 2 years now, ever since the foster system spit them out after their mother's death. The streets have been their home, a cruel teacher that's taught them hunger, cold, and the kind of resilience that comes from having nothing left to lose. Their mother was a woman they knew as Clara, though the world called her Sarah, a name she took to hide from a past she never spoke of. To the girls, she was everything, a protector, a storyteller, a beacon of light in a world that offered them none. Clara worked as a cleaner, scrubbing floors in office buildings at night, her hands rough and calloused from years of labor. She'd come home at dawn, her back aching, but she'd always find the strength to gather her girls in her arms, her voice soft as she whispered tales of a better life. One day, she'd say, her hazel eyes shining with a fierce hope, "You'll find someone who'll take care of you. He's out there, I promise." The girls didn't understand what she meant, not then, but they clung to her words like a lifeline, a fragile thread tying them to a mother they adored. Clara died 2 years ago, a quiet, lonely death in a charity hospital bed. The girls were 8, too young to grasp the full weight of loss, but old enough to feel the void she left behind. Pneumonia, the doctor said, brought on by exhaustion and a winter she couldn't survive. She'd worked herself to the bone, taking extra shifts to keep her girls fed, but her body gave out, and she slipped away in the night, her hand still clutching a small silver locket, the same one William had given her all those years ago. The social workers came for the girls, but they ran, terrified of being separated. They'd heard stories of foster homes, of siblings torn apart, and they refused to let that happen. With nothing but the clothes on their backs and their mother's locket, they disappeared into the city, for tiny figures swallowed by its shadows. Since then, they've survived on scraps, stealing bread from market stalls, sleeping in doorways, and clinging to each other for warmth. Every penny they scrounge goes to one thing: keeping their mother's grave decent. It's not much, a simple stone in this forgotten cemetery, its inscription fading with each passing storm, but to them, it's sacred. They visit whenever they can, bringing whatever flowers they can find, daisies plucked from vacant lots, their small hands arranging them with care. They've watched the stone crack and weather, helpless as the rain washes Clara's name away, and it breaks their hearts to see her memory fade. That's why they're here now, drenched and shivering, their voices raw from crying, calling out to a mother who can't answer. Violet, the boldest, has always been their leader, the one who makes decisions when the others are too scared. Daisy, the quietest, clings to the locket, tracing its edges as if it holds the answers they need. Iris, the dreamer, whispers stories to her sisters, tales of a father they've never met, a man their mother said would find them one day. And Lily, the smallest, cries the hardest, her sobs a raw, aching sound that cuts through the rain. They don't know who William is, don't know the storm they've unleashed inside him. To them, he's just a stranger, a man in a fancy coat who's intruding on their grief. But as they look at him, their hazel eyes searching his face, they feel a flicker of something, hope, maybe, or fear, that this man might be the one their mother spoke of, the one who's supposed to save them. The rain slows to a drizzle, and William takes another step closer, his polished shoes squelching in the mud. The girls tense, their small bodies drawing closer together, but Violet stands her ground, her chin trembling as she repeats her question. "Who are you?" she asks again, her voice louder now, demanding an answer. William looks at her, then at her sisters, their faces so like Clara's it hurts to breathe. He doesn't know what to say, doesn't know how to explain the impossible. But as he stands there, the locket in Daisy's hand catches the faint light, its silver surface glinting through the rain, and William's heart stops. He knows that locket, knows the tiny heart engraved on its front, the one he'd had made for Clara on their first anniversary. The sight of it, here, in the hands of these girls, is a jolt that sends him reeling, a piece of the past he thought was buried, now rising up to meet him in the most unexpected way. The drizzle has softened into a fine mist now, cloaking the cemetery in a veil of gray that makes everything feel like a dream, or a nightmare. William Hayes stands rooted to the spot, his eyes locked on the silver locket in Daisy's small, trembling hand. The faint light catches the heart-shaped engraving, a detail so familiar it feels like a knife twisting in his chest. He gave that locket to Clara on their first anniversary, a symbol of a love he thought would last forever. He can still see her face that day, her hazel eyes sparkling with joy as she clasped it around her neck, her laughter filling their tiny apartment. "I'll never take it off," she'd promised, her voice warm with a certainty he'd taken for granted. But she did take it off, or so he thought, when she walked out of his life, and he never saw it again, not even at her funeral. So how is it here, in the hands of this ragged little girl, one of 4 who claim his wife as their mother? William's mind churns, memories crashing against the present like waves against a crumbling shore. He remembers the night Clara left, the rain pounding against the windows of their mansion, her suitcase packed with the few things she still called her own. He'd been so sure she was lying about the pregnancy, so consumed by his own insecurities that he couldn't see the truth in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she'd said, her voice breaking as she clutched that same locket, the ultrasound photo tucked inside. He didn't believe her, didn't want to believe her, and he let her walk away, let her disappear into the storm. 2 months later, the call came. Her car had skidded off a highway, a fiery wreck that left nothing but ashes and a closed casket. He'd stood at her grave, this very grave, and watched them lower her into the ground, his heart as cold as the earth they covered her with. He told himself she was gone, that the child she claimed was his was gone too, and he buried his guilt along with her, locking it away in a vault of denial. But now, as he looks at the locket, that vault begins to crack. He takes a shaky step forward, his polished shoes sinking deeper into the mud, and the girls flinch, their small bodies drawing closer together. Violet, the boldest, steps in front of her sisters, her hazel eyes, Clara's eyes, narrowing with suspicion. "Don't come closer," she warns, her voice trembling but fierce, a protector in a body too small for the role. William stops, raising his hands in a gesture of peace, though his own hands are shaking now, the weight of the locket's presence pressing down on him. "Where did you get that?" he asks, his voice rough, almost a whisper, as if he's afraid of the answer. Daisy, the quietest, clutches the locket tighter, her fingers white-knuckled around it. "It was Mommy's," she says softly, her voice barely audible over the patter of the rain. "She gave it to me before she died. She said it was from someone important." Someone important. The words hit William like a punch, stirring a memory he's tried to forget. He'd had the locket engraved with more than just the heart. Inside, hidden beneath the tiny photo Clara kept, were the words, "Forever yours, W." He'd been so proud of that inscription, a young man in love, certain that nothing could break them apart. But he had broken them, hadn't he? With his pride, his ambition, his refusal to trust her. He wants to ask Daisy to open the locket, to see if those words are still there, but he can't bring himself to speak. Instead, he looks at the girls, their faces so like Clara's it's as if she's standing before him, multiplied by 4, a living reminder of everything he lost. Their cheekbones, their noses, the way their lips tremble as they fight back tears, it's all Clara, down to the smallest detail. The girls don't know the storm they've unleashed inside him. To them, the locket is a piece of their mother, a talisman they've clung to through 2 years of hardship. They've carried it everywhere, from the alley where they slept to the soup kitchens where they begged for food, its weight a constant reminder of Clara's love. Daisy, the keeper of the locket, has always been the most sentimental, the one who holds on to memories the tightest. She'd sit with her sisters under flickering streetlights, opening the locket to show them the tiny photo inside, a faded ultrasound image of 4 tiny shapes, the only proof they have of their mother's pregnancy. "This is us," Daisy would whisper, her voice full of wonder, and her sisters would nod, their small hands touching the photo as if it could bring Clara back. But there's something else inside the locket, something the girls have never understood. Beneath the ultrasound photo, etched in delicate script, are the words, "Forever yours, W." They've seen the inscription, puzzled over it, but they don't know what it means. To them, it's just another piece of their mother's mystery, a puzzle they've carried through the streets of Boston, hoping one day to find the man who might hold the answers. They don't know that man is standing before them now, his face pale, his heart pounding as he stares at the locket that ties their past to his. William's breath comes in shallow gasps, the rain mixing with the sweat on his brow. He wants to demand the locket, to rip it from Daisy's hands and see the truth for himself, but he can't. Not yet. Instead, he kneels, bringing himself to their level, his knees sinking into the muddy earth. The girls watch him, their eyes wide, a mix of fear and curiosity flickering across their faces. "I knew your mother," he says finally, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Her name was Clara Hayes. She was my wife." The girls gasp, their small hands reaching for each other, and Violet's defiance crumbles, replaced by a desperate hope. "Then you're him," she whispers, her voice breaking. "The man Mommy said would find us." William's heart stops, the weight of her words crashing down on him, and as the rain falls around them, he feels the threads of a past he thought was dead weaving themselves back into his life, pulling him toward a truth he's not sure he's ready to face. The mist in the cemetery thickens, wrapping William Hayes and the 4 little girls in a cocoon of silence, broken only by the soft patter of rain on the tombstones. William kneels in the mud, his tailored black coat ruined, his silver hair plastered to his forehead, but he doesn't care. His eyes are locked on the quadruplets, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily, their identical faces a mirror of his late wife, Clara, their words echoing in his mind like a haunting refrain, "Then you're him. The man Mommy said would find us." The weight of that statement presses down on him, a crushing force that threatens to unravel the carefully constructed life he's built over the last 20 years. He's a CEO, a man who commands boardrooms and bends the world to his will, but here, in the presence of these fragile girls, he feels like a stranger in his own skin, a man on the edge of a truth he's not sure he can handle. Violet, the boldest, takes a tentative step forward, her hazel eyes searching his face for something, confirmation, perhaps, or a sign that he's the savior their mother promised. Her sisters follow her lead, their small bodies shivering in their soaked jackets, their hands clasped together as if they draw strength from each other. Daisy still clutches the silver locket, her fingers tight around it, as if it's the only thing keeping her grounded. Iris and Lily, the dreamiest and the smallest, stand close behind, their tear-streaked faces pale in the dim light. William looks at them, really looks at them, and the resemblance to Clara hits him again, harder this time, like a wave that threatens to pull him under. Their cheekbones, their noses, the way their lips tremble, it's as if Clara has been reborn in these girls, a living testament to a love he thought he'd buried. "I don't understand," he says finally, his voice rough, almost pleading, as if they hold the answers he's too afraid to seek. "Clara, your mother, she died 20 years ago. She couldn't have children. We tried, but," he trails off, the words catching in his throat, the old pain rising up like a ghost. He remembers the doctor's visits, the tests, the quiet devastation of being told he'd never be a father. It was his fault, a cruel twist of biology he couldn't accept, and it drove a wedge between him and Clara, a wedge that grew into a chasm the night she left. "She was pregnant when she left me," he continues, more to himself than to them, "but I didn't believe her. I thought she was lying. And then she died. They told me she died, and the baby with her." The girls exchange a glance, a silent conversation passing between them, and Violet speaks again, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Mommy didn't die back then," she says, her words cutting through the rain like a blade. "She died 2 years ago. We were with her. She got sick, and she couldn't get better, but she told us about you. She said you were a big, important man, and that one day you'd find us, and we'd be a family." Her voice breaks on the last word, and she looks down, her small shoulders shaking as she fights back tears. Daisy steps forward, holding out the locket, her voice soft but firm. "She said this would help you remember her. She said you gave it to her, a long time ago." William takes the locket with trembling hands, his fingers brushing against Daisy's cold ones as he lifts it to his face. The silver is tarnished, scratched from years of wear, but the heart engraving is still there, a painful reminder of a time when he believed in forever. He opens it, his breath hitching as he sees the tiny ultrasound photo inside, for small shapes, a testament to a miracle he never knew existed. Beneath the photo, etched in delicate script, are the words he'd had inscribed all those years ago, "Forever yours, W." The sight of it, here, in this moment, is a jolt that sends his heart racing, a confirmation of a truth he can't deny. Clara had kept the locket, had carried it with her through whatever life she'd lived after leaving him, and now it's here, in the hands of these girls who call her their mother. He looks up at them, his vision blurring, not from the rain, but from the tears that sting his eyes. "How?" he whispers, the word barely audible, a plea for understanding. "How can you be hers? She was alone when she died. They told me." He stops, his mind racing back to that day, the call from the police, the funeral he barely remembers. He hadn't asked questions, hadn't wanted to know the details. He'd been too consumed by his own guilt, too afraid to face the reality of what he'd done. But now, as he looks at these girls, he realizes there's a gap in his memory, a piece of the story he never sought out. What if Clara didn't die in that accident? What if she survived, gave birth to these girls, raised them in secret, away from him? The thought is a dagger, sharp and cold, piercing through the walls he's built around his heart. The girls don't have the answers he needs, not yet. They're just children, caught in a web of loss and survival, their only connection to the past a locket and a mother's dying words. But as they stand there, shivering in the rain, their eyes locked on his, William feels a pull he can't ignore. He doesn't know if he believes them, doesn't know if he can handle the truth they represent, but he can't walk away, not this time. "Come with me," he says suddenly, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "You're freezing. I have a car. Let me get you somewhere warm." The girls hesitate, their instincts honed by years on the streets, but Violet nods, her trust a fragile thing, born of desperation. As they follow him to his sleek black car, parked just beyond the cemetery gates, William feels the weight of their presence like a physical thing, a burden and a lifeline all at once. He opens the door, ushering them inside, their small bodies huddling together on the leather seats, their wet clothes leaving smudges on the pristine interior. He doesn't care. For the first time in 20 years, he feels something other than emptiness, a spark of purpose, a flicker of hope, and a growing dread that the life he's known, the man he's become, is about to change forever. As he slides into the driver's seat, the locket still clutched in his hand, he glances at the girls in the rearview mirror, their faces a haunting reflection of Clara, and knows that this moment, this chance encounter, is only the beginning of a journey he never expected to take. The hum of the car's engine fills the silence as William Hayes drives through the rain-slicked streets of Boston, the city's lights blurring into streaks of gold and red through the windshield. The four little girls, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily, sit huddled together in the back seat, their small bodies pressed close for warmth, their wet clothes dripping onto the leather seats of William's sleek black Mercedes. He doesn't notice the mess, doesn't care about the mud smearing the interior of a car that cost more than most people's homes. His hands grip the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white, his mind a storm of questions and memories that threaten to overwhelm him. The silver locket rests in his coat pocket, its weight a constant reminder of the impossible truth he's just encountered. These girls, these quadruplets who look so much like his late wife, Clara, claim her as their mother, a mother who died 2 years ago, not 20, as he'd been told. The girls are quiet now, their sobs replaced by a wary silence, their hazel eyes darting between William and the world outside. Violet, the boldest, sits closest to the door, her body tense, ready to bolt if she senses danger. Daisy clutches her hands in her lap, her fingers tracing the spot where the locket used to be, her gaze fixed on William with a mix of hope and fear. Iris and Lily, the dreamiest and the smallest, lean against each other, their faces pale, their breaths shallow as they try to process the stranger who's taken them in. They don't know where he's taking them, don't know if they can trust him, but the warmth of the car is a relief after the biting cold of the cemetery, and for now, that's enough to keep them still. William glances at them in the rearview mirror, their identical faces a haunting echo of Clara's, and feels a pang in his chest, a mix of longing and dread. He doesn't know what to say, doesn't know how to bridge the gap between them, but he knows he can't let them go, not yet, not until he understands the truth. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he says finally, his voice low, almost gentle, though it trembles with the weight of his own uncertainty. "Somewhere warm, where you can dry off and eat something. Is that okay?" Violet nods slowly, her eyes never leaving his, her small hand tightening around Daisy's. "Okay," she whispers, her voice barely audible, but there's a flicker of trust in her gaze, a fragile thing that makes William's heart ache. They arrive at a small diner on the edge of the city, a place William knows from his early days, when he was still building his empire and needed a quiet spot to think. It's a modest place, with faded red booths and a jukebox that hasn't worked in years, but the air inside is warm, scented with coffee and grease, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile world of the cemetery. William ushers the girls inside, their small feet leaving wet footprints on the linoleum floor, and the waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looks up from the counter, her expression softening at the sight of them. "Poor things," she murmurs, grabbing a stack of towels from behind the counter and hurrying over. "Let's get you dried off, sweethearts." The girls sit in a booth, wrapped in the towels, their small hands clutching mugs of hot chocolate the waitress brings without being asked. William sits across from them, his own coffee untouched, his eyes fixed on their faces as they sipped cautiously, their movements synchronized in a way that only siblings can be. He wants to ask 1,000 questions, about Clara, about their lives, about how they survived, but he doesn't know where to start. Instead, he pulls the locket from his pocket, placing it on the table between them, its silver surface catching the dim light of the diner. "Tell me about your mother," he says, his voice steady now, though his heart races. "Tell me everything you know." Violet sets her mug down, her small hands wrapping around it for warmth, and begins to speak, her voice soft but clear, as if she's told this story 100 times. "Mommy's name was Clara, but she told us to call her Sarah when we were around other people. She said it was safer that way. She worked a lot, cleaning offices at night, and sometimes she'd come home so tired she could barely stand, but she always smiled for us. She'd tell us stories about a big house with a garden full of flowers, and a man who loved her once, a man who'd find us one day." Violet pauses, her eyes flicking to the locket, then back to William. "She said that man was you." William's breath catches, his fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "Me," he repeats, the word a whisper, a plea. Daisy nods, her voice barely audible as she picks up the story. "She said you gave her this locket, a long time ago, when you were happy. She said you didn't know about us, but if you ever found us, you'd know we were hers because of how we look. She said we have her eyes." Iris and Lily nod in unison, their small faces solemn, and William feels the ground shift beneath him, a seismic crack in the foundation of his reality. He leans back in the booth, his mind racing, and a memory surfaces, sharp and vivid, like a scene from a film he's tried to forget. He remembers Clara's sister, Emily, a troubled young woman who'd struggled with addiction for years. Emily had been at their wedding, a shadow in the background, her eyes hollow, her smile forced. William had never liked her, had blamed her for dragging Clara down, and when Emily's addiction spiraled out of control, he'd cut her off, refusing to let Clara help her. "She's a lost cause," he'd told Clara, his voice cold, his heart colder. Clara had cried, begged him to reconsider, but he'd been unyielding, and eventually, Emily disappeared from their lives. He hadn't thought of her in years, not until this moment, as he looks at the girls and wonders if the truth he's been running from is more complicated than he ever imagined. The girls watch him, waiting for a response, but William's face has gone pale, his hands trembling as he pieces together a possibility that makes his blood run cold. What if Clara didn't die in that accident? What if she survived, gave birth to these girls, and raised them with Emily's help? And what if Emily, not Clara, was the one who died 2 years ago, leaving the girls alone, calling her Mommy, because she was the only mother they'd ever known? The thought is a lightning bolt, illuminating a past he's kept in the dark, and as he looks at the girls, their faces so like Clara's, he feels the first stirrings of a truth that will change everything he thought he knew. The diner's warm glow feels like a fragile bubble, a temporary shelter from the storm raging inside William Hayes as he sits across from the 4 little girls, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily. The quadruplets sip their hot chocolate, their small hands wrapped around the mugs, their hazel eyes watching him with a mix of hope and uncertainty. The silver locket lies on the table between them, its presence a silent accusation, a bridge between a past William thought he buried and a present he can't escape. The girl's words echo in his mind, each one a hammer against the walls he's built around his heart. She said you gave her this locket. She said you'd find us. We have her eyes. He wants to believe them, wants to cling to the hope that Clara survived, that these girls are hers, but the thought is too big, too raw, and it's tearing him apart. The waitress moves quietly in the background, refilling coffee for the few other patrons, her glances toward the booth filled with a quiet concern. The jukebox in the corner hums faintly, a ghost of a melody that never plays, and the rain outside has slowed to a gentle tap against the windows, as if the world is holding its breath. William leans forward, his hands clasped tightly on the table, his voice low and strained as he speaks. You said your mother died 2 years ago, he says, his eyes searching their faces for any sign of deception, though he knows these children have no reason to lie. But Clara, my Clara, died 20 years ago. I was there. I saw her buried. So how can you be hers? How can you be here? Violet, the boldest, sets her mug down with a small clink, her small frame straightening as she meets his gaze. Mommy told us everything, she says, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She said she had to leave you because you didn't believe her, because you thought she was lying about us. She said she had to protect us, so she ran away, and she changed her name to Sarah. But she never stopped loving you. She said you'd find us one day, and we'd be a family. Her words are a knife, each one cutting deeper into William's soul, and he feels the air leave his lungs, a sharp, painful exhale that leaves him gasping. Daisy, the quietest, reaches into her tattered jacket, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper, its edges worn and yellowed from years of handling. She slides it across the table, her fingers trembling as she does. She wrote this for you, she whispers, her voice barely audible. She said if we ever found you, we should give it to you. She said it would make you understand. William stares at the paper, his heart pounding, a part of him wanting to tear it to pieces, to run from the truth it might hold. But he can't. Not now. Not with these girls watching him, their eyes, so like Clara's, pleading for him to listen. He unfolds the paper with shaking hands, the creases crackling as he smooths it out. The handwriting is Clara's, unmistakable in its gentle loops and careful strokes, the same handwriting that used to fill the margins of his business notes with little hearts and reminders to come home early. The letter is short, written in a hurried scrawl, as if she knew her time was running out. William, it begins, if you're reading this, then my girls have found you, just as I always hoped they would. I never stopped loving you, even after you broke my heart. I was pregnant when I left, with 4 beautiful girls, our girls. I wanted to tell you, but you didn't believe me, and I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. I raised them as best I could, but I got sick, and I knew I wouldn't make it. I told them to find you, to show you the locket, to remind you of the man you used to be. They're yours, William. They're ours. Please, take care of them. Love them like I did. Clara. The words blur as tears fill William's eyes, a flood he can't hold back. He reads the letter again, then a third time, each word a hammer against the fortress of denial he's built over the last 20 years. Clara didn't die in that accident. She survived, gave birth to these girls, raised them in secret, all while he lived his hollow life of wealth and solitude. But the letter doesn't explain everything. Clara says she died 2 years ago, but who, then, was buried in that grave 20 years ago? The question gnaws at him, a splinter in his mind, but before he can voice it, another memory surfaces, sharp and jagged, cutting through the fog of his grief. Emily. Clara's sister, the one he'd banished from their lives, the one he'd blamed for every problem they'd ever had. Emily, with her hollow eyes and trembling hands, her addiction a shadow that followed her everywhere. He remembers the last time he saw her, a year before Clara left, when she'd come to their house begging for help. Clara had wanted to take her in, to get her clean, but William had refused, his voice cold as he told her to leave. She's a lost cause, he'd said, ignoring Clara's tears, her pleas. She'll drag you down with her. Emily had disappeared after that, and when Clara left, William assumed she'd gone to find her sister, that they'd both vanished into a life he wanted no part of. But what if Emily had been the one in that car accident, the one whose body was so badly burned they couldn't identify her? What if Clara had let him believe she was dead, taking Emily's identity to protect their children from a man who'd already rejected them? William's hands tremble as he sets the letter down, his face pale, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The girls watch him, their small faces etched with worry, and Violet reaches across the table, her tiny hand resting on his. Are you okay? She asks, her voice soft, a child's concern for a man she doesn't yet know is her father. He looks at her, at all of them, and sees Clara in every line of their faces, every flicker of their eyes. I don't know, he admits, his voice breaking, a raw, honest confession that strips him bare. I don't know if I can be the man your mother wanted me to be. But I want to try. The girls nod, their small hands reaching for each other, and as the rain taps against the diner's windows, William feels the first stirrings of a connection he thought he'd lost forever, a fragile thread that might just lead him back to the man he used to be. The diner's warmth feels like a distant memory now, as if the air itself has grown heavy with the weight of the truth unfolding at the small booth where William Hayes sits with the 4 little girls, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily. The quadruplets' eyes are fixed on him, their small hands clasped together, their faces a mix of hope and fear as they wait for him to speak. The letter from Clara lies on the table, its words a searing brand on William's heart. They're yours, William. They're ours. He's read it over and over, each pass confirming a reality he can't deny, but the pieces still don't fit, not completely. Clara survived the accident he thought had killed her, raised these girls in secret, and died 2 years ago. But who, then, was buried in her grave 20 years ago? The question has been gnawing at him, a splinter in his mind, and now, as he looks at the girls, their faces so like Clara's, he knows he can't run from the answer any longer. He leans back in the booth, his hands trembling as he runs them through his silver hair, the rain outside a faint murmur against the diner's windows. The girls watch him, their hazel eyes wide, and he sees the trust they've placed in him, a trust he's not sure he deserves. But he owes them the truth, owes Clara the truth, and so he takes a deep breath, his voice low and unsteady as he begins to speak. I need to tell you something, he says, his gaze flickering between them, something I've been trying to piece together since I saw you at the cemetery. I thought your mother died 20 years ago, in a car accident. I was told it was her, and I believed it. But if what you're saying is true, if Clara died 2 years ago, then I've been wrong all this time. And I think I know why. Violet, the boldest, leans forward, her small hands gripping the edge of the table, her voice a whisper. What do you mean? She asks, her sisters nodding in unison, their eyes locked on him. William hesitates, the weight of his realization pressing down on him, but he forces himself to continue, his words slow, deliberate, as if he's pulling them from a deep, dark well. Your mother had a sister, he says, his voice breaking on the word. Her name was Emily. She was troubled. She struggled with addiction, and I didn't want her in our lives. I thought she was a bad influence on Clara, so I told Clara we couldn't help her. I pushed her away, and I pushed Emily away too. The last time I saw her was a year before Clara left me. I didn't know what happened to her after that, until now. He pauses, his hands clenching into fists, the memory of that time a bitter taste in his mouth. He remembers Emily's hollow eyes, her trembling hands, the way she begged for help, and the way he turned her away, his voice cold, his heart colder. I think, he continues, his voice barely above a whisper, that the woman who died in that accident 20 years ago wasn't Clara. I think it was Emily. The car was burned beyond recognition, and they identified her as Clara because Clara wanted it that way. She must have taken Emily's identity, used the accident to disappear, to protect you from me. She knew I didn't believe her about the pregnancy, knew I'd never accept you, so she let me think she was dead. She raised you as Sarah, kept you hidden, and when she got sick, she made sure you'd find me. The girls gasp, their small hands reaching for each other, their faces pale as the truth sinks in. Daisy's eyes fill with tears, her voice a broken whisper. So Mommy was hiding from you, she asks, her fingers tracing the spot where the locket used to be. William nods, his own eyes glistening, the weight of his mistakes crashing down on him like a tidal wave. Yes, he says, his voice raw, a confession that strips him bare. She was hiding from me because I failed her. I failed all of you. I didn't believe her, didn't trust her, and I drove her away. I thought I'd lost everything when I thought she died, but I was wrong. I lost her long before that, the moment I let my pride come between us. He reaches for the letter, his fingers brushing against the worn paper, and reads the last line again, love them like I did. The words are a plea, a command, a lifeline, and as he looks at the girls, he sees the full scope of what Clara did for them. She survived, gave birth to quadruplets, raised them in poverty, all while keeping them safe from a man who'd already rejected them. And Emily, poor, broken Emily, had been the one to pay the ultimate price, her death a cruel twist that allowed Clara to disappear. William's hands shake as he sets the letter down, his face pale, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He looks at the girls, their faces a mirror of Clara's, and feels a sob rise in his throat, a raw, aching sound that he can't hold back. "I'm so sorry," he says, his voice breaking as he buries his face in his hands, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I didn't know. I didn't know you existed. I didn't know she was alive. I thought I'd lost her, but I lost her because of me. I drove her away, and I drove Emily to her death. I'm the reason you've been alone, the reason you've had to fight to survive. I'm so sorry." The girls watch him, their small faces etched with a mix of shock and sorrow, and Violet, the boldest, slides out of the booth, her small feet silent on the linoleum floor. She climbs onto the seat beside him, her tiny hand resting on his arm, her voice soft but firm. "Mommy said you'd be sad," she whispers, her hazel eyes shining with tears. "She said you'd blame yourself. But she also said you'd love us, if you got the chance." William looks at her, at all of them, and feels something break inside him, a wall he's built over 20 years crumbling to dust. He pulls Violet into his arms, then reaches for the others, gathering them close, their small bodies trembling against his as they cry together, a family reunited by a truth that's as painful as it is beautiful. The diner fades away, the world outside irrelevant, as William holds his daughters for the first time, their warmth a balm to a heart he thought was beyond saving. He knows he can't change the past, can't bring Clara back, but as he holds these girls, he vows to be the father they deserve, the man Clara always believed he could be. The diner's dim lights cast a soft glow over the booth where William Hayes sits, his arms wrapped around the four little girls, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily. The quadruplets cling to him, their small bodies pressed close, their tears soaking into his rain-dampened coat as they cry together, a family reunited after 2 decades of separation. The truth has been laid bare, a jagged wound exposed to the air. Clara survived the accident William thought had killed her, raised these girls in secret, and died 2 years ago, leaving them to find him. The woman buried in Clara's grave was Emily, her sister, a tragic casualty of William's pride and rejection, her death a cover that allowed Clara to disappear with her unborn children. The weight of his mistakes, the years of loss, the pain he caused, it all crashes down on William, a tidal wave of guilt and grief that threatens to drown him. But the girls' warmth, their small hands clutching at him, anchors him in this moment, a lifeline he never thought he'd find. William pulls back slightly, his hands gentle as he wipes the tears from Violet's cheeks, then Daisy's, Iris's, and Lily's, their identical faces a mirror of Clara's, their hazel eyes shining with a trust that breaks his heart. He's a man who's spent 20 years building walls, a CEO who's commanded empires but lost the only thing that ever mattered, his family. Now, as he looks at these girls, his daughters, he feels those walls crumble, the cold, empty space inside him filling with something new, something fragile but real. He takes a shaky breath, his voice raw as he speaks, his words a promise as much to himself as to them. "I'm here now," he says, his voice trembling but firm. "I can't change what I did, can't bring your mother back, but I'll be the father you deserve. I'll take care of you, I swear it." The girls nod, their small hands reaching for his, and for the first time in years, William feels a flicker of hope, a spark of purpose that lights the darkness he's lived in for so long. The diner is quiet now, the other patrons gone, the waitress watching from the counter with a soft smile, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. William stands, helping the girls out of the booth, their small hands in his as they follow him to the car. The rain has stopped, the sky clearing to reveal a faint sliver of moon, its light casting long shadows across the parking lot. As they drive back to his mansion on the hill overlooking Boston, William's mind drifts, memories of Clara flooding back with a clarity that's both painful and precious. He remembers the way she'd laugh, her head thrown back, her hazel eyes sparkling with joy, the way she'd hum softly as she cooked dinner, her voice a melody he'd taken for granted, the way she'd looked at him, even at the end, with a love he didn't deserve. He sees her in the girls now, in their smiles, their resilience, their quiet strength, and it's a bittersweet reminder of all he's lost, and all he's been given a chance to reclaim. They arrive at the mansion, its towering silhouette a stark contrast to the cramped alleys the girls have called home for the last 2 years. The house is a monument to William's success, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers a testament to a life of wealth, but it's always been empty, a hollow shell that echoed with his loneliness. Now, as the girls step inside, their small feet hesitant on the polished floor, their wide eyes taking in the grandeur, William sees the house through new eyes. It's not a monument anymore, it's a home, a place where he can build a future with his daughters, a future Clara always wanted for them. He leads them to the guest wing, where 4 bedrooms wait, their doors open, their beds made with soft linens the girls have never known. "These are yours," he says, his voice gentle, a smile tugging at his lips as he watches their faces light up with wonder. "You'll never have to sleep on the streets again." The girls explore their rooms, their small hands touching the pillows, the curtains, the toys William's assistant had rushed to buy earlier that evening. Violet, the boldest, turns to him, her voice soft but firm. "Are we really staying here?" she asks, her hazel eyes searching his, a flicker of doubt in their depths. William kneels, bringing himself to her level, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Yes," he says, his voice steady now, a vow he'll never break. "This is your home now. You're my daughters, and I'll never let you go." Violet nods, a small smile breaking through her tears, and her sisters join her, their arms wrapping around William in a group hug that fills the empty house with warmth. As the girls settle into their new rooms, William steps into his study, the letter from Clara still in his pocket, its words a constant reminder of the woman he loved and lost. He sits at his desk, the city skyline glittering through the window, and pulls out a photo he's kept hidden for years, a picture of him and Clara on their wedding day, her smile radiant, his arm around her as if he'd never let her go. He traces her face with his finger, his eyes glistening, and whispers, "I'll make it right, Clara. I'll love them like you did. I promise." The guilt is still there, a heavy weight he'll carry for the rest of his life, but it's tempered now by a new resolve, a determination to be the father these girls need, the man Clara always believed he could be. He stands, his gaze lingering on the photo, and makes a decision. Tomorrow, he'll call his lawyer, start the process of legally adopting the girls, ensuring they'll never be taken from him. He'll also set up a fund in Clara's name, a charity to help other children like his daughters, kids who've known nothing but hardship, who deserve a chance at a better life. It's a small step, a way to honor Clara's memory, to atone for the mistakes that cost him so much. As he steps out of the study, the sound of the girls' laughter echoing down the hall, William feels a peace he hasn't known in 20 years, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he can find redemption in the love of the family he never knew he had. The morning sun rises over Boston, its golden light spilling through the tall windows of William Hayes' mansion, casting a warm glow across the marble floors. The house, once a silent monument to his wealth and solitude, is alive now with the sounds of life, small feet pattering down the halls, soft giggles echoing from the guest wing, and the faint clatter of dishes as the girls explore their new home. William stands at the edge of the living room, a mug of coffee in his hand, watching his daughters, Violet, Daisy, Iris, and Lily, with a tenderness he thought he'd lost forever. The quadruplets, dressed in new clothes that actually fit, their hair brushed and faces clean, chase each other around the room, their laughter a melody that fills the empty spaces of his heart. For the first time in 20 years, this house feels like a home, a sanctuary for a family he never knew he had, a family Clara gave him through her love and sacrifice. William sets his mug down and joins them, kneeling on the plush rug as Lily, the smallest, runs to him, her arms outstretched. "Daddy," she calls, the word a balm to his wounded soul, and he catches her, lifting her into the air as her sisters pile on, their small bodies warm against his. He laughs, a sound that feels foreign but right, and pulls them all into a hug, their giggles mingling with his own. The girls have been here only a night, but already they've transformed him, their presence a light that banishes the shadows he's lived in for so long. He looks at their faces, so like Clara's, and sees her in every smile, every spark of joy, a reminder of the woman who loved him even when he didn't deserve it, who protected their daughters at the cost of her own happiness. The day unfolds with a quiet rhythm, a new beginning for a family pieced together from the fragments of a broken past. William takes the girls to the kitchen, where his chef has prepared a breakfast of pancakes and fresh fruit, a feast compared to the scraps they've survived on for years. They eat with wide-eyed wonder, their small hands sticky with syrup, their chatter filling the room with life. Violet, the boldest, looks at him across the table, her hazel eyes serious. "Are we really staying forever?" she asks, her voice soft, a question that carries the weight of their years of uncertainty. William reaches for her hand, his grip firm, his voice steady with a conviction he feels in his bones. "Forever," he says, his eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. "You're my daughters, and I'll never let you go. I promise." The girls smile, their faces lighting up, and for the first time, they truly believe they've found a home. Later, William takes them back to the cemetery, a place that once held only grief but now feels like a bridge between past and present. The girls carry a bouquet of daisies, their mother's favorite, and place them on Clara's grave, their small hands arranging the flowers with care. William kneels beside them, his hand resting on the tombstone, his voice a whisper as he speaks to the woman he loved and lost. "I found them, Clara," he says, his eyes glistening with tears. "I found our girls, just like you wanted. I'll take care of them, I swear. I'll love them like you did, every day, for the rest of my life." The girls join him, their small voices echoing his, a chorus of love and remembrance that fills the quiet cemetery with warmth. As they stand to leave, William makes another stop, this time at Emily's grave, a small, unmarked stone he'd had placed after confirming the truth with the authorities. Emily, Clara's sister, the woman whose death had allowed Clara to disappear, to protect their daughters from a man who wasn't ready to be a father. He places a single white lily on her grave, his voice soft as he speaks. "I'm sorry, Emily," he says, his words heavy with regret. "I failed you, and I failed Clara, but I won't fail them. Thank you for being there for her when I wasn't." The girls watch him, their small hands in his, and he feels a sense of closure, a healing of wounds that have festered for too long. Back at the mansion, William gathers the girls in the living room, where he set up a small memorial for Clara, a framed photo from their wedding day, her smile radiant, her hazel eyes shining with love. Beside it, he places the silver locket, its heart engraving a symbol of the promise he made to her all those years ago. The girls add their own touches, a drawing they made together, a daisy pressed between the pages of a book, and they sit together, sharing stories of their mother, their laughter and tears a testament to the love that binds them. William listens, his heart full, and knows that this is what Clara wanted for them, a family, a home, a future filled with love. That evening, as the girls sleep in their new beds, their small faces peaceful in the moonlight, William sits in his study, a laptop open before him. He's just finalized the paperwork to legally adopt the girls, ensuring they'll always be his, and he's set up a foundation in Clara's name, a charity to help orphan children, to give them the chance at a better life that his daughters almost lost. It's a small act, a way to honor Clara's memory, to atone for the mistakes that cost him so much, but it feels right, a step toward the man he wants to be. He looks out the window at the city skyline, the lights twinkling like stars, and feels a peace he hasn't known in 20 years. The past will always be there, a shadow he can't erase, but it no longer defines him. He's a father now, a man with a purpose, and as he listens to the soft breathing of his daughters down the hall, he knows that this, family, love, redemption, is the true legacy he'll leave behind.